Okay, let's do a few examples of how to graph absolute value equations. And as we talked in class, you should already know the shape of these. They should always be a sharp V. So let's look at this one. Because it has a negative out front, I know it's already going to look like this when I graph it. Okay, it's going to be a sharp V and it's going to be upside down. So like that one has a negative, he's going to be upside down. So kind of look for that so you already have an idea. Okay, so what do? I take what's inside and I set it equal to 0. Now you can probably do this mentally, but I can see that x is going to be 1. So when I do my t-chart, the very first point I'm going to pick is 1 because I want to figure out what makes this 0. So you can see if I plug in 1, 1 minus 1 is 0, and the absolute value of 0 is 0. That right there is the peak, okay? That being the peak. So then what I do, I already know it looks like this. I just find a point on either side. So usually I try to go about 2 over, so I might try 3. You can plug in anything you want. But look, if I plug in 3 minus 1, I get 2, and the absolute value of 2 is 2, but it's going to be a negative 2. So I've got this point, 3, excuse me, forgot to write the negative down, 3, negative 2. So it looks like that. Now also one thing I do is I know that it's symmetrical with this point. So notice it's 2 over right here. So it would be 2 over right here. So it looks just like that. And if you're not sure, notice that's negative 1. If you plug in negative 1 right here, negative 1 minus 1 is negative 2. The absolute value of negative 2 is 2. So you're going to get negative 2. I know it sounded really crazy. But plug in any point you want, but there it is. And I'm looking through my phone, I missed the point, but it should look just like that. Okay, make sure you put arrows on the end because this keeps going on forever and ever. You could have plugged in 0. 0 is always also another one of my favorite points. Notice if you plug in 0, you get negative 1, but the absolute value of negative 1 is 1, but this is a negative 1. That's a lot of negatives. Okay, let's flip it over. Let's do one on the back. And the hardest one, if I recall, when I was looking at these earlier, would be this one. Remember, take what's inside, okay, and set it equal to 0. If you can do this mentally, fine. If not, then do it like that, because this will be my peak, okay? So when I solve that, I subtract 4 from both sides, and then divide both sides by negative 3, so I can see x is 4/3. Now, granted, that's a yucky point, but that's my peak. So I want to plug in 4/3. What I know is that that makes that 0. 2 times 0 is 0. 0 minus 3 is negative 3. So that's my first point. That's about 1 1/3. So you're going to have to approximate. And then I'm going to go down 3. 1, 2, 3. So it's about here. That would be a hard point to find otherwise. But remember, that is the peak of my graph. So the question is this going to open up or down? Well, notice that's a positive out there. So it's going to open up. So I already know it's going to look something like this. And obviously one of my favorite points is 0. So let's plug him in. Negative 3 times 0 is 0. 0 plus 4 is 4. And the absolute value of 4 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 minus 3 is 5. So there's my point 0, 5. And I'm looking through my phone. I think that's 0, 5 right there. Okay, so I know this is symmetrical, but that's a weird point. So I'm going to go ahead and plug in another point. So why not plug in either 2 or 3? I'm going to go ahead. What happens if I plug in 3? Is it going to be bad? Maybe too big. If it's too big, then I'll go back and try 2. But if I plug in 3, that's negative 9. Negative 9 plus 4 is negative 5, but the absolute value of a negative is positive. So this is 5. 5 times 2 is 10. 10 minus 3 is 7. That's not too bad. So I can estimate 3, 7. That's 6, so 7's about right there. Okay? So if you don't like that, you know, you could have plugged in 2, and I would have gotten a negative 6 plus 4, which is negative 2. The absolute value of negative 2 is 2, and that gives me 4 minus 3, which is 1. So I've got 2, 1. So that kind of gives me a nice point to aim for. So I've got this, put an arrow on the end, and I've got this. Okay, I'm sorry. Make yours neater. I'm looking through my phone, but there you go. Remember, you had to have at least 3 points, but make sure you find that peak wherever it is.